Information contained here in this video is compiled for the convenience of the viewer. Information is obtained from sources believed to be reliable and is furnished without responsibility for accuracy or content. Market data is subject to change at any time.
Hello and welcome to Rice Dairy TV. We got a special edition where we're going to talk about the new insurance product for dairy farmers, Dairy RP. With us today is John Newton. He's the chief economist at the American Farm Bureau. Dairy RP would not exist were it not for John Newton. He's been thinking about it for years, he designed it, and he was instrumental in making it come to life. So we're really excited, John, to have you here today, ask you a few questions that we know a lot of our dairy farm clients are very curious about understanding the product.
Excited to join you. Look forward to your questions.
Okay, John, with that, and then we're going to jump right in, kind of some of the frequently asked questions we're getting from dairies, also drummed up on our side as, kind of risk managers as to how we might use this. So first question at the top of our list that seems to be the most often right now is there a cap on how much milk a dairy can protect? And then within that, I think there's some things you can talk about as far as, what if I protect less than I produce? What if I overproduce? And I know there's some levels in here having to do with 85% on production and components. If you could just flesh out, I think a lot that has to do here with the production side, that would be great.
Thanks a lot, Ron, and I'll dive right in from where Farm Bureau looked at this. Our policy is that we don't have any caps on production. So when we developed the RP policy, we did not put a cap on how much milk you can cover. We recognize that there are dairy farms of all sizes. We wanted to make a program that would work for small, medium, and large dairies. We knew that MPP was a bifurcated program, meaning that it provided different benefits for farmers of different sizes. And we also knew that LGM Dairy had a cap of 24 million pounds for fiscal year. We looked at this, we lobbied very hard to get the cap removed on livestock insurance policies. Once that was achieved, we knew that this would be a viable option for dairy farmers of all sizes. So there absolutely is no cap on how much milk you can insure under the Dairy Revenue Protection Program. There's also the ability to use the Margin Protection Program and Dairy RP simultaneously. So farmers, especially some of the larger dairy farmers, will have an ability to use MPP to receive that catastrophic or Tier 1 coverage, but then can layer on top of that Dairy RP as much as they'd like. You mentioned the cap on limitation. We do have a cap on production to the extent that you need to deliver that milk. You cannot insure more milk than what you were delivering to market. In the event of a loss, we will ask for your milk payroll reports to see that you at least delivered 85% of the production that you covered, or about 90% of the components that you declared in the policy. We give you some leeway on that, about a 15% cushion, recognizing that this is a revenue policy. There is likely to be some yield variability, but this is not an avenue for someone to come in and overinsure. So we do have those limitations in place, and importantly, in the event that you cover more milk than you deliver and you don't meet the certain thresholds, you do not get the premium back. So there's no incentive to really use dairy revenue protection to overinsure. We really want to build something that would fit all size dairy operations, but also recognize that this is a revenue policy and there is going to be some yield variability.
Excellent. So in the case of growth, a dairy sizing it up today and they know by next fall new barns are up and you're milking an additional 10,000 cows, with this program, they can forecast that internally and have the ability to go hedge that. Now, obviously, like you said, they've got to meet 85% of that, but this gives guys, if I'm understanding this right, an ability to protect milk that they expect to make up to 4 quarters out. That's correct?
Well, actually, Ryan, up to 5 quarters out, but that's exactly right.
5 quarters, excuse me.
One of the things, we wanted to make this farmer friendly. We looked at all the pitfalls of all the existing products when we were writing this policy. So one of the things that we're not going to require you to show proof of milk deliveries. You come in, you'll buy a policy. In the event of a loss is when we're going to ask for verification and to see your payroll reports. So the farmer who decides to buy for production they expect to produce has to meet those production thresholds that we set forth in the policy. But we're not verifying. We don't need to see that you have plans to move dirt or that you bought cows in order to ensure that milk that you expect to come online.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. I think moving on past production here a little bit, we'll go right to question 2. And I think I kind of know the answer to this one, but maybe you can shed some light on it. When will we know or get the first look at what premiums are? Are they similar to the exchange? A lot of talk right now is along those lines, which gets a lot of people excited by the time you add the subsidy back in. What can you tell us about that part of this program?
Well, one of the interesting things with this, it's what's called an Asian basket option. That means we're able to come up with premiums for things that aren't publicly traded. In this case, for our component pricing option, we're able to take cheese, butter, and dry whey prices as well as option implied volatility to come up with an option price for butter, fat, protein, and other solids. And we combine it over a 3-month period, so we're able to price that. The pricing of it, we should be able to start to see that pretty soon. The approved insurance providers are building out their framework, so any of the crop insurance agents will be able to start unveiling premiums to farmers in a very short period of time. I mean, this is going to be on the market for sale October 9th. I know at American Farm Bureau Insurance Services, we've got all of our premium calculators set up so that you could see what premiums would be today if you were to go out and buy a policy. That said, it's going to be very similar to probably what an out-of-the-money put option would be. Again, but the difference here is that it's over a 3-month period, not a single month. You can't get in and out of a dairy RP policy like you can the futures and options markets. But then the USDA, federal government, is going to come in and provide a premium discount to farmers who buy dairy RP. The premium discount varies based on the amount of deductible that a farmer's going to have. So if you have 95% coverage, you've got the Cadillac coverage option, you'll receive a 44% premium subsidy. But if you have more skin in the game and you take a big deductible, like a 30% deductible, you'll get it as high as a 59% subsidy. So it will come in and discount those premiums. And then we have a minimum premium rate, I believe, of 2 cents per hundredweight that's going to be in place.
Okay, great. You touched on something there. So the different revenue levels you can protect from, 70% up to 95% with different subsidies?
That's correct.
Okay, so to talk about that Cadillac, that 95%, is it fair, as we're trying to relate this back to dairymen to, let's just take Q1 of next year as an example, and let's take an example of using Class 3 milk, 100%, right? Let's make it simple. You're pricing Class 3, and
Sure.
Let's say the futures average is $16 on the exchange. When we're looking at 95% revenue protection and trying to figure out kind of what that would be without the calculators in front of us today, if I do that quick math, that's around 1510, I think, to 1520, 95% of 16.
1520.
Is that, and I know there's a production piece we'll talk about, but is that the basic concept here of what the dairyman would be protecting when looking at the price aspect of this thing?
That is the price component of it. So again, you've got that 95% coverage on that $16, which means the value of milk on that 100% Class 3 would be at $15.20 per hundredweight. There's still a yield adjustment factor that would come into play when we determine the actual revenue, but that would be how you value the milk in the policy.
Excellent, thank you. So next question, John, we've talked a little bit about it here. Can you explain the production aspect when it comes to milk per cow for the state or the pooled region? Kind of talk about that piece versus what I inevitably end up producing. So in that, what is this yield factor, the difference there? Why should we use it? If you could dumb that down for us, that'd be fantastic.
Well, it's essentially what makes this a revenue-based insurance policy and not a price-based policy. So when you go in and you sit down with RDRS or you sit down with AFPIS or a crop insurance agent, they're going to have an expected milk production number that they'll be able to share with you for your state or your region for the quarter that you're going to buy a policy. And after your policy ends, at the end of that quarter, we're going to get the USDA NASS numbers. We'll get the actual milk production per cow. We'll compare that to what the expected value was when you bought the policy. And the ratio of the actual to the expected is what's called a yield adjustment factor. So if the actual milk production in your state per cow was a little bit higher than what was expected, That's going to be a yield adjustment factor that's greater than 1. That's going to increase the actual revenue. It's going to reduce the indemnity. To the same extent, let's think back to Hurricane or Winter Storm Goliath. If you had actual milk production per animal lower than what was expected, and your yield adjustment factor comes in less than 1, then that's going to reduce your actual revenue under the policy and increase any indemnity that's due to you. It functions very similar to other area-based crop insurance policies. The idea being, if you're producing more milk or that actual milk production increases in response to lower prices, the revenue decline hasn't been as sharp, and as a result, the indemnity is not as high. So it moves the indemnity up or down based on what's happening in state-level milk production per cow. It's not your farm-level milk production. We recognize that farm-level milk production variability is a lot higher than what you see at the state level or in a pool production region, and that's why we added an optional protection factor up to 1.5 that would allow you to further scale your indemnity higher, recognizing that the farm-level yield uncertainty is much higher than what you observe at a state level.
Okay, so a couple questions to spin off this. State or pooled region, why is there two different things there? How does that maybe matter? And then also, when will we get these forecasts from the for what they think the production will be?
Well, we're generating those forecasts now. Dr. Maren Bozic at University of Minnesota, he's done a lot of work on this project, a lot of the rate making methodology. We leaned on Maren pretty hard to develop some of these models. So we're generating that information now. We've been doing it for quite a while, feeding that information into the RMA systems. So once those insurance providers are plugged into RMA, they'll be able to see those forecasts. And you asked about state versus pool production region. It's for the 23 states that USDA provides the state level information are going to be the state levels. Indices that we'll use for DRP, anybody outside that 23 will be in a pooled production region. The reason for that really goes back to the 508 process. The concern from some of the expert reviewers when we developed this was any attempts at moral hazard where in some states where you have just a small number of dairy farmers, you could see some changes in that milk production number with the intent to drive bigger indemnity. So it's really to prevent any type of moral hazard. That's the thing with these type of policies, these crop insurance policies. They have to be developed to avoid any type of adverse selection or moral hazard in the policy, and that's what we were trying to do with this here.
Smart. So basically, for pooled versus state, if you're not in the 23 states listed in your standard milk production report, you're going to be pooled.
That's correct. And the regions we used aligned with the milk production regions that USDA ERS identified, where we have similar farm demographics. So an example would be if you're in a pooled production region in the southeast, we're not going to capture milk per cow variability in California. That's not going to be in your region. It's going to be folks that have similar weather patterns, et cetera, as what your farm may experience.
Okay, so off of that then, walk through this protection factor just a little bit more, and if you could give us an example of how that might play out. So why you'd use it, and then if you could just hear us how it would kind of work, I think that would be great.
I'm not going to get too nerdy on you, Ryan, but it's a lot similar to anybody that's got a big finance degree to a CAP-M pricing model. The beta, the correlation of your farm level's milk production to the state level, you can use this protection factor to scale up an indemnity. Essentially what it does, anywhere between 1 and 1.5, with 1 being the default level, if an indemnity is triggered, it can be higher based on the protection factor. So let's just say a dairy farmer chose a protection factor of 1.5 and was due an indemnity of $100,000. Because they had a protection factor of 1.5, the indemnity would be $150,000 instead of $100,000. So it allows them to scale that indemnity up. It does better align the milk production at the farm level with what we've observed at the state level, and that comes out of some research from University of Cornell, and that's one of the reasons we had that. Other crop insurance products have a similar adjustment protection factor The Stacks program for cotton had one, and I think some of the area-based crop policies also have those protection factors. Again, that's designed to recognize that farm level variability is much different than state or county level, and this helps account for that.
So if individual farm thinks they might be growing, expanding, they might use that.
That or to try to better align their yield variability. One of the other things to keep in mind, however, when you use a higher protection factor, that increases the policy liability and increases the premium that you're going to have to pay to get that insurance. So while it will increase in the indemnity, it will also increase the premium.
So tell me if I'm thinking about this right. Let's just say I'm in a high variability weathered state. Let's just use Texas and Goliath, for example, for whatever reasons. And let's just say I've got one of these beautiful new fully enclosed cross vent barns, right, where I really control the environment and I feel very confident my production per cow, right, it's growing X. Weather hits, I'm in a high variability weather state where there's a lot of open lot dairies. Is this a type of thing where you're talking about that, you know what you're kind of going to be, but your state carries a lot more risk? Is this protecting against something like that, or a way to be utilized? Am I thinking about that right, or am I off base on that?
It's more the opposite, where the state has less variability than what you do. So because the state has less variability, you can increase your indemnity up because you've got more variability in your revenue than what the state has. But very, very similar line of thinking.
Okay. So this would be like for the open lot guy, it'd be flipped. Okay.
Yep.
Let's pick one more to
All
fire
right.
out today.
So if I got to
We'll save some good ones for the next round too.
I think, and John, you got the list in front of you, but I think if we get one more question for you, I would probably prefer to go in why component pricing and class pricing, difference between and why someone might use it, or do you see something on here that you think would be better with your time right now?
I think that's a perfect question, and that's really
okay.
You know, let me step back a little bit and tell you why we did that. You know, you look at LGM dairy, that's Class 3 milk. Prior to California adopting a federal order, how many dairies in California got paid a Class 3 milk price? Zero. Right. You look at MPP, it's a national average all milk price. How many folks get that milk price? Zero.
Same.
So we said, okay, let's bring in Class 4 into the picture. So if you're in a heavy Class 3 region like Wisconsin, but you do have some exposure on Class 4, you can do an 85% Class 3 and 15% Class 4. Let's say we get a farm bill done and the fluid milk price becomes 50-50 Class 3, Class 4. You can use a 50-50 split between Class 3 and Class 4 in the Southeast United States or any other heavy Class 1 market, and you've covered some of that Class 1 price risk using dairy RP. But the component pricing option, the one I'm most excited about is, you know, I spent over 10 years working for the federal order. I know that more than 60% of the milk in the United States is in the federal order program, and those farmers are generally paid for what's in the milk. And on average, across the U.S., farmers have invested in herd genetics. Component levels are much higher than 3.5% fat and 2.99 protein. So bringing in the component pricing option, you can scale up the component value of milk. So in that example, Ryan, when we were talking about a Class 3 milk price of 16, well, I guarantee you a lot of farmers have a higher fat content and a higher protein content than the standard Class 3 price. So by using dairy RP, you can scale it up. And let's say you have 4% fat and 3.5 protein, or 5% fat and some protein level above 4, you can reflect that component of value of milk using dairy RP. No other policy, no other program allows that level of customization to try to minimize and reduce the basis risk. And that's what makes this product so unique, why I'm so excited about what we're able to do. And you think about the component pricing option. You think about the federal milk marketing order formulas. If you wanted to try to do protein, you're talking about buying cheese and selling butter in some relationship due to the federal order formula. But then you want to add fat back into the mix, so you're buying butter. And to try to do that with 5,000-pound contracts was just not feasible for a lot of dairy operations to try to do that. Because this is an Asian basket option, we can take the information from those commodity markets and come up with a premium for a butter fat and a protein level that we're able to use for the DRP component pricing option. That's so innovative, and Dr. Bozick has done a lot of work in this area. There's lots of research to come about the innovation that we brought with this new pricing option.
Well, we're having fun learning this, John. You know, the old adage, the rising tide rises all boats. I think that's something you've pulled off here. I think there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from this. Not only did you design something that seems extremely functional and valuable, you successfully lobbied to make it happen. So we really appreciate that kind of on behalf of the industry here, and we look forward to catching back up with you again.
Thanks a lot. I really do appreciate it, and I enjoy working with you guys. Look forward to working more with you all going forward. So thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Take
John.
care. Thanks for watching Rice Dairy TV. Be sure to click here to learn more about Rice Dairy Risk Services and the Dairy RP program.
And if you're not sure where here is, make sure you scroll down below the video and in the description, click the link.
Oh, that's what I meant to say.